Once upon a time, when I was in Peace Corps, Latza, my Peace Corps colleague, and I missed the bus in Olmash. It's nighttime, it's getting dark, you know there are bears out there. Getting a little worried, not a lot of cars. Finally, this dacia comes up, and the bachi says, you know, where are you going? Udvarhely. Get in, get in. So we're driving through the hills. And this was about the time we were building the 2% for Udvarhely, TEDxUdvarhely campaign, and I was explaining to him, we're bringing together NGOs, civil society, and people in Udvarhely to do this work together. Bachi's driving, listening. That won't work here. He said, people don't help. Bachi. You stopped in the middle of the night to pick up a Viking, and those of you that know Latza, he looks like a Hell's Angel. People don't help. Interesting. Once upon a time, sitting, I think, in the radio station here in this building, and the journalist is interviewing me, and he says, you know, tomorrow for Kolaka, for this community renovation project, no one's going to come. That's hard news. We got the mayor to say yes, that we could renovate some playgrounds. After asking people, what do you want us to work on with the community foundation? Fix the playgrounds. They're broken. They haven't been fixed in a long time. The mayor said, okay, I don't think anybody's going to come. Knocking on doors the week before, going through the blocks in TEDxUdvarhely, up in the neighborhood there, cop, cop, cop. Saturday, we're going to work on the playground. Will you come? Oh, yeah, okay. You know, my kids like to play there. It's broken. It could use some work. I'll come. Will your neighbor come? No. Next door, cop, cop, cop. Saturday, we're working. Will you come? Yeah, okay, I can come on Saturday. Will your neighbor come? No. So when the journalist said this to me, I said, but tomorrow, will you come? And he said, yeah, of course, I have to come. I have to be there to see what happened. Well, that makes two of us. We'll work on the playgrounds together. And in the end, we had about 100 people come and work on these playgrounds together. We fixed 5 of them. And over the years, we built many public spaces. Many of you probably were there. Thankfully, we had to eat all the sandwiches. And a week later, the same journalist, he calls me and he says, oh, you're doing another kolaka. And I said, no, I'm taking the weekend off. There are these bachis over in this part of town. They're doing another one. I was like, great. Go ask them why. There we go. Once upon a time, last story for today, from me. There was a flood. Many of you remember this in the Nika Valley. And a lot of farmers got killed, unfortunately. And that day, as I was told this story, I wasn't there. This was 2004, yeah? I wasn't here yet. 5? Yeah, I think 5. And as I was told the story, a bunch of guys took their off-road trucks and they put food and they put water and they put blankets and they went out to the villages. And they, were pretty upset that the government didn't show up until 3 days later. And they decided that, maybe there's something that we could do together here, something that we could try to build that didn't rely on other people. They realized something that they could do. So I think about these stories a lot, and many other stories, things that happened while I was here. And this interplay between what we say and what we think and what we do. And there's this concept, sociological imagination, which I told the story about the flood to a sociologist, and he said, oh, that's why you have a community foundation, because people broke that barrier between themselves and their responsibility to the community. When we were out painting the playgrounds and all of these people were together, I remember very clearly people next to each other, neighbors, who'd lived next to each other for years, painting like this, not looking at the person next to them, not talking to them, until we said, it's amazing, all the neighbors are here. And then people started looking at each other and talking to each other. Maybe they just didn't like their neighbors, that's fair. Or maybe it was something a little bit different, something about a new behavior that people were breaking down. They'd convinced themselves their neighbors wouldn't help. What a fascinating thing to be in a community of good people that didn't see itself as a good community. Again, I think about it a lot in particular because of what happens in a disaster. When we go through a disaster, like what happened in the Nika River Valley, like what is happening right now with the global pandemic, we change our behaviors. This is very well documented in anthropology and sociology, and many of us have seen it. Think about things that have changed in Odorhei, in this region, in your communities, wherever you're from, in this last year. Around the world, we have seen civil society, but not in the formal sense, not NGOs, not people making by law an entity. We have seen communities start taking care of each other, being the kinds of people we want people to be, helping, remembering that, there's a grandma who lives over there. Let's remember that she's there and make sure she gets food. There are kids who don't have the internet. 1 in 3 children on this planet could not do their homework, could not go to school last year. 1 in 3 children. And people coming together and saying, okay, we gotta fix it. Kids can't not have school. Grandma can't not have food. It doesn't matter if it's the government's job. The rules say it's their job to feed and educate people. It doesn't matter. It just has to be done. So doing that work, we change. But if we don't stop and talk about it, we change our behaviors. And if we don't stop and talk about it, we go back to the way we were. As the disaster goes away, as the threat to us and our people recedes, we go back to being normal. Do the kids all have internet all of a sudden? No. Is grandma still being remembered? No. She's still alive, the kids are still there, but we forget. We forget this change, this new behavior that we adopted in these times, and we go back. We have a unique moment in human history right now to have this conversation, to stop and say, what is it that has changed that we like, that we want to keep? What is it that has changed that we don't want to keep? There's a lot of crap that happened last year that sucked and it's not fun. Get rid of that stuff. But the stuff that's good, you have to say it out loud. You have to think about it out loud. Otherwise, you don't recognize it, you don't document it, you don't call out the fact that we're here together painting this thing when 2 days ago I said you would never show up, but we're here. You have to say it. You can't just talk about it. You have to institutionalize these things. Just talking about it, we want to make sure that the elderly are remembered. We want to make sure that kids are taken care of. Of course we do. Everybody, yeah, of course, yeah, that's a great idea. We must do that. Who's going to do the work? Who's going to put the money on the table? Who is going to take the time out of the day to do the work? And we're not going to keep everything. That's not realistic. But we can take an honest-to-God effort to preserve these things if we talk about it, and then we try to embody these things. So, in an effort I hope that we can all take as humanity to not go backwards as time moves forwards. I don't want us to go back to normal. Back to normal was not a healthy place for many people. It was not a safe place for many people. A lot of people say, let's go back to the way things were before the pandemic. Kids were starving before the pandemic. And people then started coming together and making sure they were fed. Do we want to go back to starving kids? I don't think so. So stop, think about these things, talk about these things, and put those values into practice with our children. We have to actually institutionalize these things and practice them so that people learn these behaviors. Just saying it isn't good enough. And it is critical that we do this right now because I don't know if you've noticed, but the world isn't getting easier. Climate change, demographics, democracy's falling apart. They're all the fourth industrial revolution. We're all going to be working for robots one day. The shifts in society that are happening, the megatrends of our time, they change how we think, what we think. The rules that we're talking about breaking will become obsolete. The rules will be broken. Rules look backwards. They help us manage backwards. They don't help us really institutionalize a future. Rules will be wrong very soon for many of the things that we care about. They were wrong during the pandemic. They will be wrong again. We have to work on thinking about the values that we put into practice so that when our kids grow up, they know how to think about what rules should be broken, what rules do not deserve to be around, what rules do we need to make because of who we are and what we care about, because of what we care about as communities, as people who like to take care of each other, like to work through the crazy things that go on in the world. The good news is it can be done. I was talking about some stories earlier where at least we started having the conversation, institutionalize some of these practices. It can be done, and it must be done. As I said, the rules are going to change. They will be broken whether we like it or not, so practicing the values and ingraining them so that we come through that well is critical. With, of course, the exception of a very few rules, which I learned in TEDxUdvarhely that we must never, ever break. So, thank you.